A, just being really good at it, B, being profitable at it, because there's a perception of it's so easy, why would I pay for it? Which then goes to what problems are you solving? If you're your first go, niche down, do it. But you better expand fast because then you are at the mercy of the market.
Welcome to Entrepreneurship by Design with Dr. C. I'm so glad you're here with us today because we have Matt Mars on. Matt is the CEO and founder of Trend Your Market, a content agency that creates high quality and high volume digital assets in the form of video and photography for businesses. He was the previous director of digital strategy and marketing for Mothers of Preschoolers International, where she was able to impact millions of women in 85 countries every year. He has had the honor of traveling all over the world, creating content for large brands like Spotify, Snapchat, and Billboard, but now is trying to quiet down his life to be more present for his wife and two kids. Thank you so much for being here today, Matt. It is such a pleasure to have you. And when I first started to hear your story, bits and parts of it, I realized that your journey in entrepreneurship has been nothing short of remarkable and truly a roller coaster, ups and downs and everything in between. But I would love for you to tell us a little bit more of how you got here today.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't know quite how far back we want to go, but I will start with whenever I came out of college, all I had was a degree in classical guitar, which sounds like a lot of fun, but you really can't make much money doing that. And I was newly married. We made $0 and I needed to figure out a way to make more money. And so I was terrible at photography, but I realized that the camera that I bought had a video function to it. So when I flipped it to video, for some reason, all of a sudden, everything just made sense. And so from there, it was really just based off of a need of I have to support my family. My wife was getting her master's, so she was not working. I was working at a church playing guitar. So, and then it was just, I was working also about 40 hours at a restaurant being a server. I had like 4 or 5 different jobs, and so I was like, "Well, why not add one more?" And so I started a video production company based in the wedding industry because we were young, newly married, and a lot of our friends were as well. And so if I could make 500 bucks here and there filming my friends' weddings, that'll pay some bills, especially back then in Louisiana. So I think that was I didn't really actually when I did it, I wasn't thinking, "Oh, I'm an entrepreneur." I was literally just providing for my family. So I didn't think of it as I was like this guy who's just grinding it and like just killing it, making moves. It was just, I got bills to pay. And so really, I wouldn't have even called myself an entrepreneur back then, even though I owned my own company. Like I just wouldn't have. Those kind of terms weren't a part of my life. And so it wasn't until I like left that, whenever I sold my half of that business, that I actually really started to understand that what I had was unique and it was different and not everyone did that. So that was kind of where things started from as far as like from an entrepreneurial standpoint.
I love it. And, I've heard a couple people say this recently that have been in the entrepreneurial world for a long time. They didn't call themselves entrepreneurs. It was just small business owner or like self-employed, but how this term has really grown over the years. And I know your business has grown over the years. You've done different things. You were part of Mothers of Preschools International, doing that with marketing as well, and then transitioning into more video and photography outside of weddings with bigger brands. What was that transition like from working as a photographer, weddings, your friends, and then moving into working with mops and now with bigger brands and where you are today?
So whenever I was doing the wedding industry stuff, they basically, I was once again didn't feel like me owning a business was a big deal. So there were other production companies in the area that were taking notice of the work, and so then they would contract me out, and that was my first exposure to more corporate, the political world, those bigger brands. And so one I was working with a lot essentially tapped my shoulder and they said, "Hey, I know you have this business, would you be interested in coming on board with us?" And so that's why I inevitably sold my part of the business and then essentially signed on with them, and which then they kind of exploded. I'm not saying they exploded because I was there, even though I would like to say that. But I mean, they exploded. They went national. We were filming for Spotify, Billboard, Snapchat, Vivo, did a presidential campaign. I mean, congressmen, we were all over the place. And the problem with that is around that time, my wife and I started having kids. Now, the kids weren't the problem part, but it was that I was never home. I was always in like 2 to 3 different time zones a week, which isn't great for a wife who never signed up for being a single mother. And so basically, we needed to change. And so a lot of people thought I was crazy because I was filming all of the stars. I could name drop better than most people, but none of that matters. None of it matters if you're not home with your family, helping raise them. So I basically inevitably started looking for a job so that would keep me home. And so at that time, we were in Louisiana, and there was a job opening. My wife's parents were in Denver. And so they sent me a job application for Mothers of Preschoolers International. And so we moved the whole family to Denver. And then that's whenever I kind of moved into a marketing director role, the digital strategy role there. But it's a nonprofit. And so, nonprofit, like, I will never impact more people than I did in that season of my life. I mean, the work that I was doing was impacting millions of mothers around the globe. I think now they're in 100 countries. Whenever I left, they were in 85. So just this massive impact that you can have. But, when it comes to it, I mean, Denver's a pretty expensive place to live as well. And the bills weren't getting paid. And I've never had less than 2 to 3 jobs at a time. So even though I worked full time in a director role at Mops, still doing contract work, still picking up odd jobs as much as I can. Once again, not really labeling myself an entrepreneur. I'm just trying to pay the bill. And
Right.
so whenever I did that, I ultimately had to come to the point of where I need to actually start my own business and call myself an entrepreneur and build something that will last, that is sustainable, something that I never would have known 10 years ago. And so that ultimately caused me to jump ship once I had a couple clients in my pocket to kind of go out on my own. And then, success or failure, one of my favorite moments that I always tell from that period of time is that whenever you quit your job and you start a business, everyone says, congratulations. And my response to that always was, we'll see. Like,
Yeah, yeah,
because
it's true.
it could be, or it could be a train wreck. And I could be, I could be cooking dishes in the restaurant down the street, real soon. Not dissing
Right.
anyone who does that, but like, I might have to be that person kind of thing. And so that reality, I think entrepreneurship sometimes is sexy until you actually do it. And then once you do it, you realize that it's a mixed bag and you're not guaranteed success at all. You're actually guaranteed more failure than success. And so you try to mitigate risk however you can. But, it's wild to look back at what I've done and the people who I've filmed and the brands that I've worked with, and to come to a period of life where, ooh, if I don't actually pursue this again, I'm not going to pay my bills. And so that's just like a wild circle of how that can happen in your life. And really, it's entrepreneurship is really all it is problem solving. It's just finding solutions. And in your own world of not being able to pay the bills or medical things piling up, whatever that may be, entrepreneurship is just another way to solve a problem. And so that's kind of how I view it. I really don't glorify it. I don't think it's this amazing thing that everyone should do. To me, it's just another solution to a problem.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more because I do believe, I love that you said when people are like, oh, congratulations, you started your new business. A lot of people don't realize how much it takes to have success in a business. And I think, I don't even know what statistics are. I believe it's like 90% failure rate. Like I could be totally off, but it's just those one or two ideas that you have a solution to that you've been able to uncover because of all the failures. Because I was always terrified to fail growing up in a perfectionist mindset, and that is not entrepreneurship. You fail so many times, but then you learn, you gather those skill sets, you get those ideas. Okay, this didn't work. Let me try something different. And I'm curious, when you did make that leap from doing all the odd jobs, making all the thing ends meet that people don't always see on the outside. You like see it when you're at the inner circle. But when you did make that leap to start creating your own business again and having that full creativity and everything that you wanted to do to make that happen, what were some of those obstacles in the beginning stages? You had a lot of skill sets already, you had already done it before, but did you encounter any obstacles during that process?
all the time, and I still do. I think you're always reiterating. You're always figuring out what's the next thing. You're trying to look ahead and find the solution to the problem that doesn't even exist yet. And so, luckily, since I had done it before, really all that does is buy me time. It buys me a little bit of extra wisdom and a little bit of time knowing what may or may not work, and also just how to test before you launch your business. So, Trend Your Market, the business that I launched and currently run, it did not look how it looks now at the beginning. It's like six products down the road of from where it was. And I think one of the best strategies that people can't believe I actually did, but a way to test your product and to figure out would it work is I actually went to a realtor event, knowing that realtors are really not my clientele. So I already know that they're not interested.
Right.
But it was a 2-hour event that had about 100 people. And every 5 minutes, I got to pitch a new realtor on something I knew they wouldn't want. And what that allows you to do is it allows you to change your product every single time. It doesn't even exist. You don't like you're not actually interested in a yes. The only thing you're interested in is getting an eyebrow raise or a that's interesting or ooh, I knew that that would work for my friend who owns this business. Like all you're doing is data finding. I was not there to book a single client, and it turns out I didn't because I wasn't looking for it. And if you can go into the testing phase with that kind of mindset, you can't get disappointed. Like the only disappointment is did you not come away with anything that you learned or that can be of value? So I think that it is figuring out those little systems in place that could be valuable to you that can enhance your product quicker is always valuable. And so that was like one of the wild, kind of crazy things that I did. And I did a few different times. And that helped mold my product over and over again to figure out if it was a good fit for whoever my clients were going to be. Because I had bought the LLC. That was it. Like
Yeah.
I named it without a product in mind, which is probably a terrible idea. But I'm very fortunate that the end product that I landed on it still works. So I would say otherwise I would have needed the LLC something else. But I think that there's a couple little things that you can do with experience that can really help speed up some of that research and development process.
And that's so valuable. It's the intentionality when we go into something, not trying to find clients, more of building relationships and getting the market research, like you mentioned too, because when we have that power of knowledge, we're able to apply it, we're able to figure out different ways. But I love that you said when you went in there, okay, 100 real estate agents, but being able to tune it and tweak it based off of who you're talking to. And you never know who knows who that can refer
Mm.
or just continue to expand your web of a network. And I love that you went in there with that intention because a lot of times I do think from just individuals I've spoken to when they go into a networking event, it's like, okay, I want to get clients, I want to get this, instead of I want to build this relationship. I want to know what's out there. I want to be able to just have more of a base for market research, especially when you're starting out, because it can really morph. Like what you said, it started with one product, now it's like six in, and probably even more, and continue to expand based off of what the clientele needs and your market, and continuing to expand and help more people. And I'm really curious, in your opinion, what do you think the key ingredients are for creating high quality and high volume digital assets that resonate with your audience?
I'm going to sound like a broken record because I already know that I've heard this several times, but it's the value that you're creating. And also putting out digital assets can be different there because there's different goals. And so that was one of the things that I've been iterating on ever since is whenever I first started it, I was thinking, man, if I make a bunch of it and I post it everywhere, they'll be happy. And that's just not the case. Their business has different goals. And so figuring out what those goals are and then aligning the strategy to that, you can have your core base of, so we do mostly video production stuff and we do short form videos, podcasts, long training kind of things. But not every business wants all of that. Sometimes they just want this. And then inside of that, there's a whole particular strategy just for that. And so I think understanding what problem are you solving for them that they can't do, but then also what results are you giving them? And so you might solve the problem, but like I can film you and we can post a lot of stuff, but maybe your goal is business, or maybe your goal is I want followers because I want to build my brand in that way. Maybe it's just a lead gen funnel. Maybe I want to grow my newsletter list or my email list or whatever that is. Inside of short form video, that can look wildly different. Maybe they just want a lot of traffic to the website. It's like, okay, that looks way different than a lead gen automated direct message funnel on Instagram or something like that. And so I think understanding and having a comprehensive look at the things that you can solve and the ways that you can solve it, and if you can operationalize that to where it's efficient and where you're making money, the sooner you can figure that out, the bigger leg up you'll have in your business.
That's so true because it's hard to be everywhere, especially if it doesn't make sense for your business or what your goals are based off the
Mhm.
content you're creating. Because, yes, you can post it everywhere, but is it giving you the results you're looking for, whether it's website traffic versus clients versus building your brand, whatever it may be? There's a lot of different landscapes out there that you can have that strategy that works best for your business and figuring that out. But what do you see as the biggest challenge facing content creators and digital agencies in this ever evolving landscape of the digital world?
I think that creating content's never been easier. I mean, you everyone knows you can do it on your phone. We're doing it right now over Zoom. Like it's simple. It's easy to actually do it. I think the hardest part is A, just being really good at it. B, being profitable at it because there's a perception of it's so easy. Why would I pay for it? Which then goes to what problems are you solving? And then it's like you have to be really good at it. You have to know what's happening, what's the landscape, and that goes industry by industry. And so a lot of people will niche down, which I think is great for people that are starting out. But if you understand multiple different industries, I think that there's value that you can provide, and you might not need to niche down. I think people say niche down as much as you can all the time. It's like, okay, chill out. Like that's
Mhm.
not always actually the case. Like I have clients in all different kinds of industries. So I'm breaking the rules in the same way that I learned in music. You learn music theory so you know how to break it, but you can't break it efficiently until you learn what the rules actually are. And so I think people overemphasize niching down.
Yeah.
Now, if that's your zone, if sweet, kill it in that zone.
Mhm.
But like I've done presidential campaigns and I've done rap music stars for Travis Scott. Like those don't connect. I mean, I guess
Yeah.
Kanye did see Trump, so maybe it does connect, but like
A little
that's
bit.
just yeah. So maybe there's some weird connections there, but I think people try to oversimplify sometimes,
Yeah.
and it's okay if it's complicated. It's not supposed to be easy, and I get it. Niching down makes things easier. Like yeah, it does, but I just don't think it has to be. It's okay if it's complicated because if it's complicated, all that means is that somebody else isn't going to do it because it's too hard. And so I think it's okay for things to be hard. When I butt up against hard things, I just know that there's less competition in doing it. And so in a way, that's a way of niching into a complicated category
Yeah.
that then you can kind of own if you want. It's like, oh yeah, you want oh sorry, yeah, they don't do that in industry, but this guy, he does everything. And so I think and I'm speaking generalities, but I just don't entrepreneurship, a lot of people are like, "What's your niche? What's your niche? What's your niche?" It's like, "All right, what does your market research tell you and what are you good at? Let's go there and then figure that out." So, I don't know, that it's a little different than what I hear a lot of people say, but
Yes, this is music to my ears because I agree. Like I go back and forth on this where everyone's always like niche down. And I did at first, and then I like made it broad, and everyone's like, no, now you need to niche down. And I don't believe that. I think you need to have a solid foundation of your skill sets. And that's what I think you're talking about as well. Correct me if I'm wrong, but being able to be in different industries and how you can morph it and make it connect because there's a lot of things I do, but everything connects. And the foundation piece is relationship building. And that's based off of my background and everything. But everything I do has to do with building relationships. Business comes, yes, in different capacities, but I totally agree with you. And I feel like I would get like a lot of hate because everyone's like, everyone I've
well,
interviewed, well, not everyone, I would say like 80% of people I've interviewed, it's about
mhm.
niching down. And I do agree with having a solid foundation, but then you build upon that and can go into different industries and make it not so simple, but more complex sometimes, the more you can tap into different areas and make things work in the way they're supposed to for you. And everybody's different. That's the
No.
beautiful thing.
I think a lot of people don't factor in the risk factor. And so I think a large portion of entrepreneurs is you try to mitigate risk. The more you can mitigate risk, then the higher opportunity they have. And so if you niche down into a market that is affected by COVID, you're screwed, legit screwed. But if you diversify, it's the same thing with like your assets and your stocks and what you're doing. Like you diversify. And so in the same way, if sure, for your first go, niche down, do it. But you better expand fast because then you are at the mercy of the market. And so once again, I think if you think about risk mitigation, niching down too far, you're increasing your risk. And that's what a lot of people I don't hear talking about.
Yeah, no, I don't hear that enough. So I'm glad we're talking about it
Yeah.
because it's important. It's just bringing awareness to different things and looking at different avenues and how you can solve problems. And I'm just curious because of outside of just the niches, the trends that are happening, what are some of the trends that you've been observing in digital content creation for businesses, particularly in video and photography?
Yeah. So each platform is a little different. And so understanding how each platform works, if that's what is important in the industry that you're pursuing, I think that is helpful. I think that what the biggest movement that I've seen in the last 6 months, and you're starting to see social media platforms cater to this quietly. So I think TikTok's really the only one who's really speaking about it outside, like to the general public. But so short form videos have been like the bread and butter for the last 4 years, I would say. The problem with that, and there's been a lot of data and research on it, is that it can help sell products, it can help build brand, but building brand is way slower on short form video versus YouTube, long form, podcasts, long form, like what we're doing here. Because the reality is, if this conversation was 45 seconds long, they wouldn't care about me and they might care about you because it's your channel and maybe they start to recognize you, but they certainly wouldn't care about me. And so the value that you're creating is so much more limited. The long form brand building is way more powerful in the long run. It'll increase the value of your brand and potentially your business. And so what you see a lot of platforms doing, and TikTok has done this, you can actually post up to 10 minutes on TikTok. A lot of people don't even know that yet. Instagram has already said they are making plans to do longer than 60-second clips for reels. So they're going to be coming out with something soon. And so, and I don't, whenever this releases, they might already have it out yet. And so that is because there are content creators that are trying to make money. And these platforms want them to make money because then they'll stay creating content, which then keeps people on the platform. So they want to cater to the creators. But what they're finding is that the short form video stuff, it's really, really hard to monetize like the TikTok shop and like when you're selling products, that's different than what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And so we're actually starting to see, I call them like micro segments. And so if we were to have, if this conversation is 45 minutes, you're going to splice it up into, a couple 45-second things. But then you would go back through and you'd say, man, this 3 to 5 minute chunk is awesome. Let's just post the 3 to 5 minute chunk. And so it's like this weird middle ground that we're starting to see expanded where I don't want to listen to Joe Rogan's 3 hour conversation. And honestly, 30 seconds, it's like I don't even know who this person is yet. But the 3 to 5 minute, I've even noticed in my own consuming habits starting to go to that 5 minute mark of a conversation because I feel like I can understand the conversation they're having, but I don't have to invest a whole car ride on it. It can be something that I do when I get ready in the morning kind of thing. And so I call them micro segments. I'm sure people have like highlight reel. I don't know what they're going to call it, but that's really the next thing that is gaining a lot of traction and that I'm starting to see more creators do, but only at the upper echelon. A lot of the smaller creators are not doing it. And so if you're a digital agency creating content for businesses or you need to create stuff for your own thing, try 3 to 5 minute segments as well. because especially on YouTube, you can link things to other videos now, which is super powerful. And so I would say make sure that you put as much effort into that as you do your short form, because that's at least for 2024. I think that'll be the biggest uptick for businesses and creators.
That makes so much sense. And now I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go back and do like 3 to 5 minutes.
Yeah,
At least for like
yeah,
TikTok and everything. Like Instagram, I know I can do like up to 90 seconds. Like that's the longest I've been able to go. But there's so much truth in that because you don't get the full context of like a conversation in 30 seconds or 45 seconds. But if it's a little bit longer, then they're going to want to watch the whole interview and get more context if it makes sense for them. But at least you're getting those like takeaways quicker in the 3 to 5 minutes. And it just makes more sense too, because now you're investing a little bit of time. You might want to go research that person, connect with that person, and continue to impact in a different way. I love that.
right. And the hardest part about doing this for businesses is that they're always looking for the ROI. And so the hard part in having value based conversations that help you build your brand is most people don't know really what brand is to begin with. They think it's a logo and some colors and maybe our slogan that shows up under our logo and on our business cards. And that's the extent of their brand. And if you think about the people that you value and trust that you follow online, it's probably not people. If you follow people online on short form media, it's normally because they entertain you in some kind of way. It's not, oh, I'm going to get my most valuable chunk of information of the day in this 45 seconds. Like you're not thinking that. You're going to be you're going to be consuming content that's longer than that because you are investing into that person and into that brand. And so if businesses and content creators can think about their brand and the longevity of it, it will always be much more powerful in the long run. And so the example that I always use for businesses that are having trouble understanding this is Dwayne The Rock Johnson. He created his own tequila company. And so he was, of course, a mega movie star. Yeah, wrestling, all of that.
Yeah.
But he worked on his brand for over 20 years. And then he created Terramana, a tequila company. And overnight, when it released, he became a billionaire. Now, there wasn't a single review. The tequila could have sucked. It could have been terrible. I
Yeah.
think it's fine, but like it could have been terrible. There wasn't a single review, but he became a billionaire because of his brand that he had built over 2 decades long, probably even longer than that. And so businesses are oftentimes trying to find the microwave approach to dollars and they forego the longevity of their brand that then inevitably won't make them last. And so if you can break this down to not just businesses, but your own personal brand and what you're doing, that longevity piece, I hope to be more valuable in the future than I am today. And the only way that I can do that is if I continue to provide value and stack that value over and over and build my own brand. And so, as creators, if we can think in that same way as entrepreneurs, then we get it. There's only a certain amount of money that you can survive on. Like you need to make money at some point. And so, it's a balance. It's that risk mitigation that we're talking about earlier. But if you can focus on your brand and really do that consistently, you're going to outlast your competitors because you're not thinking about now, you're thinking about the future. So it's the same thing when businesses make goals. Like maybe you're just starting and you want to be at 10K a month. Well, if you're actually going for 10K a month, that should not be your goal. Your goal should be 30. Make your goal 30, and then you'll get to 10K a lot faster. And so
Yeah.
you have to be planning. It's like, okay, so my goal's 10K, but you need to be thinking what's the next one so that way you can get to it. And so if you it all makes sense. It's all an ecosystem of thought in that way. And if you can just apply it, those same rules to a lot of different things in business, you might not get there faster, but you'll get there safer, I think, you know.
Absolutely. And I feel like a lot of people want to get there faster. And I understand that because you want to be able to live a certain lifestyle or have these certain goals. But I love what you said about the 10K to really like 30K and looking at it, the longevity aspect. You have to reach higher than what you're aiming for because then you'll fall, but you'll still be higher than you were beforehand. And I think that's a huge testament to the 10K. Like if you want a 10K, reach for 30K, 50K. You might not reach that, but you're going to reach closer than you were if you didn't have that goal. And I think it is that longevity piece because it's building that trust like no factor that takes time. No one's going to believe you right overnight, like that you're this person, but being able to have that consistency, keep showing up, keep adding value. Because at the end of the day, when we are adding value, it just continues to solidify who we are, how we show up, who, like even on the outside as well and the inside. But I think a lot of people are really striving for, I want to be a content creator, I want to make this amount of money, when it's really building that brand, building who you are and letting people in a little bit, maybe not fully in, but enough for them to get to know you and really feel connected, because that's where the value piece comes in, and continuing to show up for your community as well. And I'm really curious because there's been a lot of trends. Things are always moving so quickly in the digital world in particular, but just in life as well. How do you stay ahead of the curve and adapt changes in technology as well as consumer behavior within the content industry?
So it's funny that you asked that, and not a lot of people ask it because they think it's luck. One of my chief jobs at MOPS was over innovation. And so it was my job to figure out what the next thing was. And a lot of people just think it's luck. Sometimes it is. But, I attribute a lot of my successes to being able to figure out what's going to happen in the next few years. And so one of the best things that I have found is either on YouTube or in the music world, finding those micro influencers with a lot of engagement and then figuring out what they're talking about. So I know the biggest guy on the planet right now in the sports world is like Pat McAfee. I found him whenever he was in his basement right after he had quit football. Like no one knew him. I mean, people knew him from his career, but they weren't like following him.
Yeah.
And I was like, he's going to be the next guy. I can literally go to friends and be like, remember how I was telling you how he was going to be the next guy? Sam Smith. I was listening to him way before he had even launched a single video. And I was like, this guy is going to be huge. He's going to be the next thing. And then 2 years later, he got on Saturday Night Live and exploded. And he already had a lot of steam at that point. But I think if you can train yourself to try to find those micro content creators that are getting way more engagement than they should. And so maybe they have a couple thousand followers, but they're getting like 500 comments per video or something like that. It's just like, this is outlandish. Like, this should not, they're beating the statistics in that way. And then diving in and figuring out why. Because typically the innovation is always on the fringes of those things. It's certainly people who are on the biggest stages, they're typically not innovating anymore. And you can find this from businesses too, whenever you look at business history, like whenever you look at Intel. So Intel, you know, back in 1970, I'm getting my years wrong, but they were making RAM. And RAM is just system memory on your computer. And Japanese companies started coming in and undercutting them. They made a conscious decision that majority of their business was making RAM to shift to processors and say, they're beating us. We have to innovate. And so a lot of people don't know about this, but it's in the history books. Like they made a conscious decision. We're not making RAM anymore. We're only going to make processors because we know that we can do it better. And everyone only knows Intel as a processor company. So that is one of the few instances where these large companies can innovate, and they are very few and far between. But for the most part, you've got to find it on the fringes, and you have to train yourself to look. And so that's probably the hardest part is taking aside. Now, I was getting paid as a part of my job to do that, but taking time to look on the fringes and find out what's the next thing, because typically there can be a 3 month to a 2 year come up of whatever that trend or that new next thing it is. And so when we're talking about like the micro content, like 3 to 5 minute thing, really people were starting to do that 2 years ago. And like that's when it really started to show up in a lot of places. And now social media platforms are just starting to cater to it. So you could have known about it 2 years ago, but you have to train yourself to be actively looking and being actively curious. And that's really the only way, because it's not going to just fall. If you're seeing it on TV, if it's on your phone or something like that, like a notification, you're already behind. Like it's already happened. And sure, jump on it, go ahead. Like that's totally fine. But it takes a lot of intentional effort in order to stay ahead.
That's so true. I mean, that's how we are in the solar industry. My husband and I, like, we're already thinking 20, 30 years down the line and already know what's coming next based off of like our intel. Well, mostly his, but I'm learning a lot too. And it's just crazy what he said a few years ago has now happened. And I feel like what's going to happen in the next few years, like, we're already planning for that and thinking that way. And I think in any industry that you're in, it's so important to be ahead of the curve and just knowing what's coming, but doing your research. And it always goes back to just staying on top of things, because if you don't innovate, you're going to be left behind.
And a lot of people, they do too much catering to what they want. And I think that's a big problem. Is it doesn't matter what you want. It matters what
Yeah.
the masses want in the future. And so lots of times we get caught in our own little cycles of, ugh, oh, I don't care if they have like 1,000 subscribers and 2,000 comments. It's like, what? No, you should be taking notice of what that is. Or maybe they're this O'Connor Price, this next big,
Yes.
rapper that just blew up. I was watching him years ago because he's like an actor kind of thing. He was an actor, and then during COVID started doing that, and now he's like on his first tour or something like that. And so, because I saw the engagement that he was having, I was like, dude, this guy's got it. Like, I mean, I enjoyed his music too, but he was just so innovative and so creative and the way that he did things. And so, I think you got to be looking outside yourself as well because yourself might probably doesn't have the right answer.
Oh, it's so true. You're speaking to me like 7 years ago, because it's like, oh, he's doing this and this, and like, I like this. Why doesn't everyone else? But
Right.
it's taking that step back, doing your market research, and just also like playing into what is the problem you're solving and what is going to help somebody continue to grow. And I know you've helped so many people in so many capacities, but I would love to hear one or two client success stories if you could share with us today.
Yeah, for sure. So I'll try not to go too wild with some of them because I'm sure people always show or always tell their best ones or whatever. So I had an attorney client that basically, typically, especially with short form video, business starts kind of coming in 3 to 5 month mark when you're doing it consistently. It all depends on how often you're doing it, how many platforms, all that kind of stuff. But we started kind of gung ho in the first month, and he had to contract out 3 extra people in order to keep up because his business had 200%. Inside of that, he then called me and said, the last 2 days, I've had 100% close rates, which I, it sounds silly. Like when you tell that to people, it's like you're lying. Like that's not actually real.
Yeah.
But basically, every time he picked up the call, he closed, which speaks to the brand and how much that matters. And so that was one client, another client of mine. They really just wanted traffic to their website, which I think social media can be great for. And they had been trying for 2, 3 years, and they could only get a handful every month of clicks through social. That was why they wanted social media. And so within 2 months, I think I had gotten them like 827% more than what they had. And it's just because, once again, short form video being used for different goals looks different in that way. And so we pivoted and did a specific goal for that. And so therefore they got crazy amounts of traffic to their website. Now from there, I'm like, the sale's up to you, buddy. Like I can't help you past that. And so don't get caught in that trap of being responsible for things you can't control as an entrepreneur. When you're trying to like build the best offer, make sure you actually can control the offer. But then we have other things where building a training library of videos doesn't have monetary value in the moment, but in doing it for a couple years, whenever they go to sell, they will be more valuable than their competitor because they have a library of training assets. And so that goes into kind of what you had even brought up at the very beginning of this is whenever we say digital assets. And it's because if you have it and your competitor doesn't, you are more valuable and you are increasing the value of your business. And so a lot of business people don't understand content creation. They don't understand social media, but you talk about increasing the value of their business and building equity. It's like those are the words that they like to hear. And so you have to understand the language. And so in the same way with you and your husband doing solar, you know all the language, you know what people want to hear, you know all the different types. And so that's the benefit of knowing the industry and potentially niching down at the beginning, but like expanding, because expanding your niche also at the same time is like you're expanding your understanding. You're growing as a human as well. You're growing as a marketer as well and a salesperson and how that goes. And so I think that if you can do that for businesses and you can make sure that they are growing and expanding, then and you're adding value in that way, then I think you can have a lot of customer success. You just got to make sure that your product can meet several different goals. It needs that flexibility because if you only can solve one problem, then you're going to have a tough time to sell. But if you can solve multiple problems, then you can kind of pivot and move around as you run into different businesses that do things different ways.
Absolutely. I mean, I've just seen it in the 5 years we've been in solar. Well, I've been in 2.5, but still seeing the growth that's happened because of, okay, well, COVID happened, niching down, focusing on residential, then moving into commercial, then having an electric master electrician and other things we help with the whole home now. But it evolved based off of finding the needs. And our customers are like, I need this person. We're like, well, we can do that. And just even with video and photography, you might have not been in real estate, but being able to know people that might need it in other industries and continuing to expand. And I think it's looking at it from a bird's eye view, like, okay, you see the big picture, but how can you kind of go through when you're coming down? Oh, I see this opportunity and that opportunity. It still aligns, but being able to continue to grow and expand. And it's not staying stagnant and in your comfort zone because there's every day, I feel like we're moving in different directions. That's the end goal, the same end goal, though. And that's what I'm
Yeah,
hearing.
and you just have to remember, Amazon used to be a bookstore.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Point
I
blank.
mean, I mean, the results are all around you.
Oh, yeah,
Google used to just do Google search.
exactly.
So it's all around you. So if somebody just says niching is the cure, it's like, just look around. Literally every successful business has broken that rule pretty much all the way. And so it's just, yeah, we're talking about it over and over again because I guess I know a lot of people that's what the thing that they live and die by. And I don't know, when you look around, it just doesn't seem to be true.
Not at all. Like, I believe the solid foundation, but it's growing and evolving, and you're always going to be evolving because we're human. If we don't change, everything around us is still changing. So it's moving with the times, At least that's
Mhm.
how I think.
Absolutely.
But I'm glad we're
Yep.
talking about it. And,
Yeah.
I know you have so much knowledge base and wisdom when it comes to video, photography, business, running a business successfully. What advice do you have for aspiring entrepreneurs looking to start their own content or digital agency?
So I think one of the most important things that you can do as a person that I think then translates to this is I didn't coin this term. I don't know who did, but it really meant a lot to me is skill stacking. And so it's the idea as you go through life, you are continually learning a new skill. So whenever I was in high school, I was learning music. You want to know how much audio plays a part in videos? Half of it. It's literally 50% of the video is audio. So then, so I built that skill and I learned it at a high level. I have a degree in music, so I understand audio extremely well. Okay, so from there, I started learning photography, was terrible at it, but then I went to video. Okay, cool. So now I'm gaining this huge high level production understanding of video. Okay, then I went and then I learned marketing because I was in rooms with Snapchat executives that I shouldn't have been in. And so I'm learning marketing, and then I go run an international nonprofit where I understand different cultures and customs and how they all play a role in the colors and the language that you use. Once again, still leveraging my music, the degree thing, because that always matters. Then I did a lot of stuff at church. And so I understand what it means to at a nonprofit that has employees and a nonprofit that runs on volunteers. And so now I understand how to speak to both of those audiences, not just from a marketing, but from a support standpoint of going into business owners and knowing what they're going through. And so now, whenever I go into this digital agency, this content agency that I've built, I have every tool that I need. It's just taken time and experience. And so if you're a young entrepreneur, the only thing I can say is never stop learning and do it consistently. Because if you can consistently learn something new every few years, get really good at it, and then be okay with moving on to the next. Once again, not niching down on your skills either, just throwing that back in there. Like you will stack a particular set of skills that no one else has. And you will increase the value of you as a person. Because let's just say entrepreneurship doesn't work out. Maybe you want to and you try it out and you're like, you know what, stress is too much. You just can't figure it out. Maybe I just can't figure out the finances and it's too expensive to hire, a bookkeeper, a CPA, or maybe, a CFO or whatever that is. Then you go back to that, that W 2 way better than you left because you have a much stronger understanding. And so even if entrepreneurship, if you dive in and it ends up not working out for you, that experience makes you so much better and so much more valuable than it did before it. And so a lot of people will say, you don't fail, you just, you learned and then you move on. And that's really hard. That's a whole other topic. That's really hard to just like, it's easy to say, very hard to actually do successfully. But from a skill standpoint, if you can, so maybe you're a teenager now listening and you love social media. It's like, cool, try to get really good at taking maybe photos or maybe get really good at copywriting. I think copywriting is kind of becoming a lost art due to chat gpt. And so because chat gpt can beat all of the unskilled copywriters, but if you're a skilled copywriter you will destroy chat gpt. And so because you have to get to that next level in that skill. And so if you're a teenager, what is it going to be? Commit 2 to 3 years to it. Like you can even like line this up and you can always change it. Like I think, if you don't have a plan, you don't have a target kind of thing. So at least make a plan and then just say, hey, I can see how people can build the skill set in this way. Because business is the same way. You start here and you have a plan to get there. And so in the same way with your own life and the skills that you're learning, start here and then build on it. And it's okay if they don't perfectly align, but at least you have it. And so I think that young entrepreneurs, be consistent with what you're doing. If you can be consistent in anything, you will beat out 99% of everybody else because you know what people can't do is be consistent. So like, I mean, just look at how people can't get off their phones kind of stuff. They don't have that self-control and that discipline. So if you can have that self-control and discipline, you'll beat just about anyone you go up against.
Oh, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I feel like consistency is my superpower. Other things, not so much. But when you are consistent, continuing to show up, continuing to learn and grow from each skill, it's not going to work out perfectly every time. And it might not, but it's never wasted because now you have that new knowledge set and how you apply it might look a little different than what you had planned on, but you can still continue to grow and evolve. And I think that just encompasses everything we've been talking about. But I'm curious, what are some of the tools that you use on the back end to support your growth?
So a couple things that I use just to operate my business through is I use the free version of HubSpot because it allows me to have a meeting link for free. Then I link that with my Google and I link it with Zoom. So when people do a meeting, it automates the Zoom. Like, and this is like super basic. A lot of people, this might be like, oh, everyone knows that. I talk with a lot of business owners. They don't know how to automate a single thing. And it took me like 30 minutes. Now all these systems talk with each other now, which is so helpful. And so I do that. I mean, I obviously use ChatGPT in a couple different ways. It'll never it'll never replace, but it can shortcut some menial tasks that will kind of jumpstart you. I don't think it should be used as a sole solution to something, but it can just jumpstart some tasks, which is helpful. As far as growth goes, for me personally, I think that it really comes to the most growth that I found, at least in this entrepreneurial journey, is going outside of myself and saying yes to networking, saying yes to anyone who might need to chat about business that maybe they're getting started. Whenever I was at a creatives thing here at the Business Foundry. I mostly met videographers that were just starting their business, and they're like, "How do I get clients?" And I was having like 45-minute conversations with people that they just needed to know how to get clients. Like, all right. And so I talked with them, and I was like, "Dude, here's the solution." I was like, "Find me in 6 months," because then I'm putting his feet to the fire. It's like, "I've already given you the solution. Now what are you going to do with it?" And he's like, "Ooh, I like that." He's like, "Okay, I hope I find you in 6 months." And so, not saying that I make it easy for people. I try to have accountability with everybody, but in that same way, I try to have accountability with myself and making sure that I'm doing everything that I'm preaching in that way. And so, I think networking events like where we met, I was showing up late because I already had this other thing, and I had told the person who was organizing it, I was like, "I'm gonna be super late, but I'll be there." And then after I got to meet you, and then I would get to have this conversation. And I think that just putting myself out there consistently and saying yes to those opportunities. I did a podcast last week with a young tech entrepreneur that was from I want to say some place in India. I'm gonna get that wrong, but very, very poor and all of that. He's like kind of making waves in his little tech thing. He had never done a podcast. And I actually met him on a sales call, and it became a thing where I was like, dude, you need to go outside yourself. Like, because he was very reserved and he was very worried about his English. And I was like, you're not gonna learn how to communicate unless you do it. And so he's like, would you let me do my first podcast and you be the guest? I was like, absolutely, let's do it. And so last week, his first podcast, I got to be the guest of it. Who knows if it goes further past that? But I think putting yourself in situations where you are trying to give, knowing that you're going to get taken advantage of. I think if you can do that, then you'll continually grow as a person. And sure, there's going to be some hurts and some pains in that. But if you can focus more on yourself than what other people are gonna do, then I don't know, so far that has been positive. That has been an upward trend for me and who I am as a human and continually growing. And it's once again, it's one of those things that's really easy to say and hard to do. And so I'm not saying I'm perfect at it at all, but it creates some really special moments and some really cool things that just wouldn't have taken place if you didn't put yourself out there.
Oh, I love this. And I think that's a big part of it, just being able to connect with different people. You never know what can come from something, having a sales call, and then you end up on somebody's first like episode on the
Yep.
podcast. And I think it's just beautiful moments like that. You just really never know unless you get out there. And I mean, I just started networking here in Denver in November, and I've met over 300 people. And now I've like slowed down because okay, I need to foster those relationships now. And
Yep.
but it's just I would have never met all these incredible people like yourself if I hadn't gone out there and tried different networking events and just talked about what I do, but also feeling it out and seeing what other people do too, because I love connecting other people with other people because it's just how the community continues to grow and foster. But it starts with putting yourself out there, like you said, and you just never know what opportunities can come, no matter if it directly or indirectly impacts you. And I think that's a beautiful thing. That's what I'm hearing from you as well.
Absolutely.
Yes. But with everything that you have done, I know you've already accomplished so much, but what are your future aspirations for the next few years?
Hmm. So obviously with the business growth, there are certain stepping stones that you have kind of in front of you that you want to achieve. One of the things is my wife is a therapist and she is incredible at it. I mean, one of the best. She outranks most people in the state as far as how many people she intakes and helps. But that kind of job when you're dealing with everyone else's problems takes a toll on your body. And so we were fortunate enough to be able to get it to where every other week she can take off a Wednesday in the middle of the week. So my next goal is that where she can lower her hours to where she can take off every Wednesday. And then of course, a couple years down the road, ideally I want to retire her. And so because that job is grueling and it takes a part of you because you're giving it to somebody else. And so what she does is amazing, but at the end of the day when we retire, I still want to have a part of my wife there that is super jaded by the people around her and just the effects of that kind of job. And so I don't want her to be in that long term if I can prevent it. So, and this isn't just like we've talked about it. It's not just like she's cool with it too. So some guy like trying to, make
I
her
get
stay
it.
at
I get
home.
it.
And so that's really kind of my goals aren't necessarily obviously they have monetary attachment to it, but the goal is really a certain lifestyle that I want to achieve. And so I don't know what those dollars are. I don't know what that means. I have a rough draft in my head of what that looks like. But also, I typically always say that I pencil my plans in because you never want to ink them in because it never actually is going to happen like that. So I have some pencil marks down the future that I would like to achieve, and so we'll see how it gets that, and then when it happens, then I'll get a big old sharpie out and make my mark in there. But for now, it's just rough draft plans. That's what I'd say.
I love that. I'm taking that. I've never heard that because everyone like penciling. I mean, people pencil in plans, but I think the fact that there is an eraser, you can change it, make adjustments because nothing is set in stone because life does change pretty rapidly. And your life is a testament to that of all the things that you've encountered and switched and shifted around. But I love that you are focused on just being able to live a certain lifestyle. And being a former therapist, I can definitely empathize with your wife and how much
So
that takes on your mind and body. But I think it's beautiful what you've created and what you've been able to accomplish, and just giving back and getting other people's messages out there through video and photography, and just being able to elevate other brands. But I so appreciate you coming on today, Matt. Where can people find you, find your services? We're going to link everything below. But if you could let us know too.
yeah, so my business is called Trend Your Market. And so trendyourmarket.com. And so it's a pretty simple single page thing. I try to release about a blog a week that has tons of data on what the next trends are, how's 2024 looking, your business, why do you need it. So feel free to go to that blog and find something that is valuable there for you. If anything, if you're looking at to being something like my agency, then you have more ammo in your belt on sales calls because it's all the proof, and it's not necessarily just my opinion. All the sources, which I typically try to source about 15 different people for every single article I do, and so that's always at the bottom. So that's just always a good way to potentially learn some new things there. Then on Instagram, it's just Matt underscore Mars. And so my name is, you pronounce it like the planet, but it has two R's. So MARR. And then I post on LinkedIn, Matt Mars as well there. And so that's where LinkedIn, I post more of my businessy things. Instagram's more personal kind of stuff. And then of course my website. And there's a contact form that you can fill out. And if you wanted to schedule a meeting with me and talk more. And what I always tell potential people, because a lot of people, you're always found by the people who can't afford you first. And so because of that, I basically say, have a meeting with me and let me give you some good ideas that you can run with so that you get so busy you have to use my services. And so I want to help you get there. And so if you want to steal my ideas, that's totally fine with me because you can't afford me anyway. But hopefully by using some of my ideas, you get so busy that then you have to come back and pay me. So it's unselfish selfishness, if
I
I can
like the
say that.
logic.
Uh, yeah, yeah, it works. A lot of people. I was met a couple and they were doing an escape room. I was like, why don't you just do this, this, and this? And they're like, yeah, we're doing that absolutely. So it's fun because once again, it's just giving back. I try to say that if you can make your friends 8 times what you make, you'll be rich. And so I think a lot of it is putting more value out than what you intend on receiving. And so I feel like if I stack that up enough, then I should be successful. At least that's the fingers crossed version.
You're doing it, you're making it. And I just, again, appreciate you coming on, all the insights that you shared with us, and we'll continue. But definitely check out Matt's social media platforms. I was looking at his website earlier today, and like a few weeks ago too when we met. But you just have so many articles out there, research. And I was just looking at your AI articles like in the middle section. But there's just so much knowledge there. So take it, absorb it, and apply it. But thank you again, Matt, for coming on and just sharing everything that you did today. And I look forward to seeing you in the future again.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. Make sure to like, subscribe, comment below. What was the biggest takeaway from Matt today? I'm sure he would love to see that comment, and we'll see you on the next episode.